So, we're going to talk a little bit about the store of the future and how RetailNext aims to get us there, how we can enable that, how we can empower retailers to build this store of the future, what this store of the future looks like, what the data that will come out of this store is, how we'll use that data, some of this kind of stuff. So, we start with where we usually end up, Hollywood's version of the store of the future. This is now an old movie. 12 years ago, this is what the store of the future looked like. Tom Cruise walks in, he gets retina scanned, he gets greeted, hello, Mr. whatever his name is, and how's that shirt that you purchased last week? And then he walks through the store and does some of these kind of things. What's interesting about this to me is that 12 years later, we've already got all this. We don't actually retina scan customers very often, but we do identify them when they walk in by various other means. As you saw earlier, we can identify you and give you exactly the cookie that you want, and that's not entirely different than what we have here. So where do we go next? I didn't know the answer to that, so I asked lots of people, and I was hoping that they were all going to say the same thing, because that would have made our jobs a little bit easier. They were all going to just tell us what the store of the future was, but that didn't happen. They all had different ideas about what the store of the future was going to be, what their shopping experience was meant to be like, what they wanted to do when they walked into a store and how they wanted to shop. Everybody had a different opinion. Lots of different ideas, lots of different stuff. Luckily, there's some commonality. This is by no means an exhaustive list of the different things that people asked for in this store of the future, but the point is that there's some common ground. You take all of these different ideas, all these different opinions, all these different voices, and you boil it down, and there is some commonality between them. One of the main things was personalization. People want to shop the way they want to shop. And so if we treat that as a concept, given that all of these different people have different personalization needs, but if we want to enable personalization, that's a concept that we can work with. We're going to go through a little bit about how we can enable a lot of these different things. And what I'm going to do is touch on how RetailNext as a platform can actually enable a lot of this stuff. So we need a strategy. We're building a platform. We're building a lot of technology. We're coming out with new features and functionalities all the time. You saw Maria this morning talking about all the things that are new in 5.0 and the things that are coming later in the year, and there's all kinds of new stuff. But we need to frame that in terms of a strategy. Where is this all going? What is this going to look like in 5 years? How are we going to get there? And how can we drive towards that in terms of technology? We don't know what the technology is going to be, so this is a pretty challenging problem. New things are getting invented. We don't want to get caught off guard. We don't want to count on some technology that may or may not come to fruition, but we need to be able to take advantage of things as they come along. So we have a strategy. We take our technology and we divide it into 4 layers. There's the sense layer, we gather up data, processing layer, we do things with that data, the analyze layer, the analysis layer, where we actually come to insights and come to conclusions about that data, and then the presentation layer, where we give it back. And we'll go through each one of these in a little bit more detail. So the sense layer, where we gather up all this data. We want to gather up as much data as we can from inside the store. All sorts of different kinds of data. The Internet of Things is pretty compelling, and we've talked a little bit about that today. This is something that's happening with or without our involvement. We're hoping to move it forward in any way we can, but it's happening. It's to some extent here now, and it's getting more and more. The floors are talking to the walls, and they're all talking to the point of sale, and the products are talking to the people in the store, and everything's sort of talking to each other. They're all generating data. The HVAC systems are generating data. All these things are generating data, and so we can take all that data in. It tells us lots of things about what's happening in the store in terms of mostly the inanimate objects. This is the Internet of Things. So it tells us what the things are doing inside the store. Video analytics. This is an example of our current video analytics. We're tracking the locations of people. This is sort of the simplest thing that we can do in terms of video analytics. This is the most basic. We can figure out the locations of people, but there's all kinds of other stuff that we can do here. We can understand, for one thing, the directionality of somebody. Which way are they facing? We can do pose estimation. Is somebody jumping up? Are they squatting down? Do they have their arms out? Which way are they looking? We can do gaze estimation. We can understand if somebody reaches out and touches a product, if they take that product and pull it back. We can do all these things from video. The example that I usually give to get intuition for what you could do with video is imagine yourself in the ceiling of the store looking down. What kinds of things could you learn? And we can get video analytics to drive towards all those sorts of things. I could sit there and watch this all day, but I won't bore you guys. Wireless, you know, we've talked about Wi-Fi, we've talked about Bluetooth, BLE, pulling lots of data from different wireless sources. You know, all sorts of different ways that we can pull data, all sorts of different data that we can pull, what people are browsing when they're in the store, things from iBeacons, these sorts of things. And this is growing and changing. We don't know what's coming in 5 years, we don't know what's coming in 10 years, but we want to be ready for it. And whenever these new technologies come along, we want to be able to take data from them and use that data alongside the rest of our data. Third-party data, we think about getting data from, you know, point-of-sale systems is one of the easiest examples, but there are lots of other systems inside the store where we'd like to get data. We'd like to get data from credit card companies, for example. There are lots of different places that we'd like to get data from and take this third-party data and integrate it also with what's happening inside the store. You know, social media is another good example. You get data from Twitter and Facebook and some of these kinds of things about what people are doing while they're inside the store or what they're tweeting while they're inside the store. So we have all this data. We have a bunch of raw data, and it's messy, and it's from all different sources, and it doesn't really do you a lot of good. You've learned a lot about what's happening in the store, but it's raw data. So the next thing we do is we process this data. It's data cleansing. This is bringing the data together. Sensor fusion is one thing that makes nerds happy. It's things like sensor fusion and diagrams full of equations and stuff. But what that really means is just taking the data that we get from the sense layer and bringing it all together. Taking video analytics, for example, and tying it to Wi-Fi, and tying all these different data streams together in meaningful ways. You start to do that in real time, and you start to be able to influence your video analytics from what's happening in Wi-Fi, and these things start to be able to influence each other live and in real time. They all get more accurate, they get more powerful, they're greater than the sum of their parts. It becomes pretty exciting. Like I said, nerdy stuff, this gets us excited. This is where we talk about big data in the processing layer. We have lots and lots of data. We already generate trillions of data points, and that's going to grow by orders of magnitude, many orders of magnitude. As we bring in more data types, as we bring in more stores, as we tie all these things together, we need to be able to process that data effectively, be able to get at the answers that we want from these huge, huge data sets, you know, terabyte, petabyte data sets that we want to be able to get data out of. So this is things like Hadoop and, you know, different architectures. There are lots of different ways to frame these big data problems. Lots of engineering challenges, lots of interesting database challenges, and this kind of thing. Look at customer movement. So we've gathered up a bunch of video data, and we've tracked the locations of customers. So we have a day of movement data. This also gives you an example of how big this big data is. This is just one day. That's a lot of movement in one day. But if we take these data types and we tie them together, we can now tag all this movement data with all the other data that we're generating, demographics, data from Wi-Fi, and these things, to be able to segment. You say, let's look at the movement patterns of women aged 30 to 39, for example. We can segment even further. Women aged 30 to 39 who didn't purchase anything. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. And if you're browsing on the Wi-Fi when you're in the store, we could look at, you know, women aged 30 to 39 who looked at Amazon while they were inside the store and then didn't purchase on Tuesday at 12:54. And you can get more and more and more granular and be able to query these huge data sets to be able to get at some of these segmentations. We look at the analysis layer. This is basically data science. This is what we can do with this data and take these huge data sets. You know, we now have this huge data set where we can look at these movement patterns, but we want to be able to get answers. What does that mean? It really doesn't mean much. It doesn't really help you until you've done some analysis on it. So here we're seeing one customer moving through the store and building a statistical model of this customer as they move around. We won't get into the details of the statistical model unless on the off chance that you're interested, but I don't think most people are. But now we're seeing this model filling out as more and more customers go through this store. We look at more and more of these movement patterns going through the store. The statistics fill out, and we start to get a sense of what's happening in this store in aggregate. This is that same day of data, so this is still just a day of data. And we can start to see these patterns arise. We can start to be able to analyze them, start to be able to understand these movement patterns as they build up over time. Again, this is data science. There's It's a very, very active field. There's a lot of data science going on in the world right now. There's a lot of development. There's a lot of innovation happening in data science. Fields like epidemiology, where they're trying to study disease outbreaks, I think are actually really, really interesting for us to look at and leverage. Where what they want to know is, how clustered a disease is, for example. They've already got statistics about that. Maybe we want to know how clustered movement patterns are inside a store. So we can use some of those kinds of tools that already exist. And of course, we'll develop our own tools, our own statistical methods in order to get at some of this stuff. We can look at flow patterns. I think Shelley and John were just showing some of the flow maps in one particular store. If we layer this on top of that processing so that we can segment, we can look at flow patterns for women aged 30 to 39, for example. We can look at these flow patterns for all sorts of different segmentations and do all kinds of things with these flow patterns. And again, here's women 30 to 39 who didn't purchase. We can compare how those flow patterns differ. And is there something about the non-purchasers, how they're moving through the store, that's interesting, and that can help you drive business, and that can help you to turn them into purchasers. At the end of the day, that's what we're really after here. We get to presentation, how we present this data, how we give the data to the people who need it. And this is everybody from the analysts, John and Shelley and Chitra, to retailers themselves, data scientists. There's all sorts of other people who want this data. We need to be able to present it to them. We need to be able to give the data to the people who actually need it. So this is partly UI and UX design and getting those things right, and coming out with new reporting frameworks and some of these kinds of things. But it's also cool stuff like Iron Man having holograms and video interfaces and that sort of thing. I didn't think we had sound here. I guess we do have sound. Dance a little bit. It's actually incredibly distracting. Ah, good. Thank you. But the point here is that there are developments in interface design. There are developments in ubiquitous computing. I think I saw somebody with a watch that was tied to his phone today. There are all these kinds of things that we're going to need to leverage. We're going to need to be able to take the data and the insights that we're generating and put them on people's watches and put them into holographic interfaces and different ways to see this data and different ways to see the insights and the things that are driving businesses. So the summary of these layers, the sense layer, we gather as much data as we can. This is coming from everywhere. As much data as we can possibly get our hands on, and we're driving towards that. We have lots of different ways that we're trying to build on that. We take that data and we process it, we integrate it together, we cleanse it, we build it into big, scalable data sets that we can access quickly and reliably. We analyze that, we take those big data sets, and we process them, and we do things to them so that you get insights out of it, so that you get understanding of what's happening, and we present that data back to you, and we present those insights back to you. So now I'm going to go through an example of what this all looks like, how we can actually do this whole process in order to understand what's happening in stores, or in this case, in the store of the future. We want to understand the store of the future. So we did a survey. We had a lunch where we ordered a lot of pizza, and in order to get the pizza, you had to fill out a survey. So everybody at RetailNext filled out a survey, gave us a bunch of answers to this. I don't think we're advocating giving customers surveys when they walk into the store, but this was one way for us to generate this kind of data. Another way to generate this kind of data is to infer it, to watch what's happening in the store. We have a customer moving through the store here. If we do this at scale, we have these huge data sets, then we can start to understand these individuals, and we can start to rank people and say, this is a customer that likes to wander around. This is a customer that likes to go straight to the thing they want. We can personalize these kinds of experiences, and we can generate the answers to these questions. Privacy, we can infer that. If you come into the store and you immediately turn your Wi-Fi off and you're hiding your face, you're probably pretty sensitive to privacy. If you immediately give your name to anybody who wants it and your social security number is written across your shirt, you're probably less concerned about privacy. So we can infer a lot of these kinds of things.